it started pouring. I did fish the other night, which was about the same. Throwing, it actually picked up when it got dark with a couple of these deer spun gurglers and some clousers.
I give you props for in this weather.
It was dark.
This chilly stuff out there after dark.
Yeah, but this was before. This was
dumb.
like Wednesday night. I told my wife I didn't even come in the house. I went right down to the pier, and got right in the water. And was that the first? No, I fished it in. But it was one of the warm nights. Completely glass on the creek.
Mm-hmm.
Stars. It was nice. But that was about it for me.
I don't know what happened here, Joey, but our live stream ended. Without me ending it.
Okay.
And I just restarted it, but I think we're having some bandwidth issues.
Yeah.
So we this week. But
It's back up.
Yeah. Are you back on it?
Yep.
Okay. So you can see it again, because I went over real quickly to check to see if anybody had popped in, and there was nobody there. And then I was like, oh wait a minute, it just said it stopped. So I literally went through the process of stopping it and restarting it again.
As long as you got audio.
We have got to we'll figure out this bandwidth thing. I think we talked about this on the last bit. We're going to go fireside because that's where the router is.
Yep.
So we're going to do fireside chat so that we can dump this Wi-Fi stuff and go straight hardwire Ethernet, old school, directly into the router. And I think that's going to make a difference. I think we're going to get some much better bandwidth. So
did you get on the water?
I did. I fished right before that cold snap. Did pretty well, 10 or 12 fish. Picked up some topwater fish. That was, I think, the cover photo for this week's podcast was one of those absolutely gorgeous fish. I picked up like 3 dinks on Sunday. So after the weather turned on Sunday, that rain finally stopped and the sun came out. I jumped in the boat real quick and got literally less than an hour in, 7 fish. 4 of them were shorts. They're probably, somewhere between 15 and 17. Fun to catch, but nothing to keep.
Yep.
Which I'm probably done keeping fish anyway.
You keep fish.
I kept like 5 fish this year. I probably kept like 5 fish this year. Nothing but rockfish either. I didn't keep, the perch. I caught perch, kept perch. And I would call that a good day. But I'm excited about this weekend with the weather warming up.
Yep.
Because I think we're going to be able to get on the water and fish. Probably I was looking at the way the tide swings too for the creek. I have a low tide sort of just before lunch every day with a high tide that's peaking out just after dark. So I'll be able to fish an incoming tide every afternoon from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Must be nice.
I am pretty doggone psyched about that. So I think that's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Meanwhile, I work like 80 hours over here.
it is what it is. It's kind of working for me. It's kind of work. I don't know. So we are going to actually now transition in and bring Tony, our guest, in. Tony, welcome to the podcast, buddy. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much, you guys, for having me. I appreciate it.
Do a real quick reality check. You can still hear us. We can still hear you. So I think we're all good to go.
Yep.
Good. Hey, Joey, why don't you do a little quick introduction for Tony? Let everybody know who he is.
I guess I should do that. Nothing wrong about Tony. So Tony is, let me read that right. Tony is the vice president and the policy director for the American Saltwater Guides Association. Tony, a long time. I think I met Tony when I was like 16. When he was, when I first met him, he was doing some work. I'll let him go into what he wants to talk about. Tony also has been putting on probably one of the coolest fly fishing shows that I've been to.
Really?
Tie Fest every year.
You've heard you talk about that before.
So he slaves away and does all the back work for that, which is, I don't think he gets enough pats on the back for that, because that's something everyone looks forward to every year. And then the rest of the year, he is working hard to keep. So hopefully I said all that right, Tony.
I think you did a pretty good job.
Anything you want to correct?
I'm not used to doing that. Yeah, anything you want to correct.
No, I've just been doing fisheries policy work for 2 decades, and I started out with kind of state work and with the regional, and now I work on some federal issues as well as regional issues. So there's a lot going on in our fisheries, and and it's super complicated, and there's a massive barrier to entry. People being able to actually even understand what's going on. And I try to bridge that gap between science and being an honest broker for the normal recreational angler, because I think the biggest problem that we have is the wrong information.
Good. That's really good to hear, that there's somebody that it's so hard, and what it sounds like to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're taking some of that scientific ease, science speaks that all of us can understand, and
remain active.
That is so difficult, and it's probably the biggest roadblock in my opinion. I mean, and we talked about this last week, Joey, where treating the bay as an ecosystem as opposed to a home for a specific species that you want to manage. It just doesn't work. You really got to treat it as an environment, and everything impacts everything else. And you want to add a layer of complexity to try to understand something that just does it right there. Because how does the menhaden affect the striper, affect the crab, affect the grasses, affect the birds? I mean, all of that stuff comes together. And wow.
If too deep, you just want to talk about your background fishing wise, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I have to do since I can first remember. These are, fishing is literally the first thing I remember. I came from a pretty, committed outdoors family, going back generations and generations. And I'm from the South, and I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and have deep family roots in Louisiana that probably go back before the river. And hunting and fishing is what we do. I picked up fly fishing when I took me under his wing. And I conventional fished, and I did both conventional and fly fish, up past college, and never got bored of it, never took a break. Started finding myself fly fishing more and more. It's not about the biggest fish that you catch or how many you catch. It's just you're doing it the way you want to do it, and you're just having fun the way that you want to have fun. So that was like my path. Now I like the challenge of finding a new fish, whether it's a snakehead or a red drum or whatever, and figuring out how to catch them on the fly and learning about them. And, that's what fishing is to me. It's as much I eat and breathe, every day of my life has something to do with fishing. And I'm very, very lucky, very grateful that I get to do it for a job as well.
It's like a puzzle. Putting a puzzle together. That's kind of the way I look at it.
That's it. Tony came down in the middle of summer when we were starting to get the share, that same time of year where those fish make it through the fun of that on the fly rod is.
What's your take, Tony? I don't want to jump ahead, or maybe we should come back to it, Joe. You want to come back to the puppy drum? Because I'm curious, puppy drum, and if you've got any insight on that, I'd love to hear it, Tony. But maybe we want to come back to that, Joe. Is that
you have any other? So we see the life cycle of the puppy drum relative to the Chesapeake Bay, not relative to just here's the life cycle of a puppy drum. But I think the reason why we see boom and bust cycles for puppy drum, and we're starting to see more bull red drum, adult red drum. It's like striped bass, red drum have the tendency to have real prolific year classes. And that's when conditions permit themselves for these larvae. They're the exact opposite of stripers. They spawn offshore, and the larvae is brought into the estuaries. So when you have these real robust year classes, and a lot of times you can look at a real powerful hurricane like Dorian, that happened right around the spawn. And that, we kind of call them hurricane babies, because when you have a hurricane at that time, at that strength, it's usually real good for a red drum spawn. And you have these prolific year classes. We had them 8-9 years ago, where they were just everywhere. And I think what we're seeing now are two robust year classes of puppy drum that are moving through our system, because when you have so many small red drum, they'll spread out, and they're not just staying in South Carolina or North Carolina. The larvae got up into the Chesapeake Bay. It was a good environment for them to grow. I have friends in southern New Jersey, like Cape May area, that are catching puppy drum out of the surf right
Wow.
now. So they're well beyond the Chesapeake Bay. Last year, probably the most normal fish to catch in Ocean City Inlet, Ocean City, Maryland, was puppy drum. It wasn't striped bass. So, and also I think there's an aspect to it, like we have white shrimp in the bay now. Tarpon are becoming more frequent catches. We have state revenue. It's not just one. We got one, and the next year it was broken, shattered by about a fish that was over 5 pounds. So we're seeing some changes in the Chesapeake Bay. Okay, I mean it is debatable. A state record triple tail, a new state record sheepshead. These are fish that have inhabited the Chesapeake Bay before, and it looks like they're coming back again. Wow. So you have 2-year classes of red drum that were fairly prolific. So I think that in your area especially, you probably have 2 more good years of sub 27-inch fish. They grow really fast. By their 3rd year, they are getting close to 30 inches, and they get out of Dodge and they become part of the coastal stock, much like a striped bass, but just in reverse, because they spawn offshore, but they grow way faster than stripers to about 30 inches. And then when they become an adult, their growth rates slow to a crawl. There was a few years ago, there was a redfish that was captured with a tag in it. I think it was 38 inches. When it was originally captured, it was a little over 28 inches, and it was 36 years.
Wow.
So it had grown way less than an inch a year. I guess what I'm saying is those big fish are ancient. The 40, 50-inch fish are ancient fish. So they grow super, super fast, and then the growth rates just plummet. And they become part of the coastal breeding stock.
That's fascinating. I had no idea that those fish were that old.
Not the bigger ones.
I mean, the bigger ones. The bigger ones.
I knew the younger ones just grew like a rocket.
So
you could, if for any listeners out there, you can Google. I think it was in the Orlando Sentinel, or maybe the Tampa Bay paper. But the tag was actually so old that they didn't have computer records at the time, and the son of the guy who tagged it worked for Florida Fish and Wildlife, contacted his father, and his father had paper records in a file cabinet in his basement.
My goodness. Jeez. So I just want to see if I can get.
It's a compelling story. You know what I mean? Like it just shows that these are not like these once says red drum get above 40 inches, they are precious as diamonds. These are big fish that took a long time to get old. They're good genetic stock.
I want to see if I've got it if I've got it right, because what I heard was, the storms bring the larva up into the bay.
No, the storms, it's more like the drenching rainfall.
Okay.
That the coastal storms bring to us.
Okay.
And the nutrients that they bring in for the larva in the coastal estuaries. It's not like the wind pushes them in. It's it's coastal currents that pull them into the estuaries, and it's more related to like what the available food source, what the salinity of the water is.
Okay, I'm glad I asked for clarification for that, because like you said in the opening, it's like, we're laymen. That kind of a details, like where these fish all of a sudden came from, and how long can we expect them to be around? I mean, that's tremendous impact on the fishery for the next 2 or 3 years, quite possibly.
You should have, and I despise this word with every fiber of my being, but you should have an absolutely epic, insane, like most fun you've ever had. So good that the good fishermen don't talk about it anymore.
Wow.
Fishery for red drum, especially next year and the year after that.
So it's funny.
And they'll be big too. They'll be much larger than what you caught this year.
Wow. I can't hardly wait for that, Joey. Yeah. And I give Joey some credit. I think Joey brought this on. I think Joey...
it was like crack for me when I don't know.
I don't know. It was back It was like March when you started talking about redfish. I want to get on some redfish. I heard some people say that there's some places in Solomon's up in the creek you can go find some redfish. And it was like all of a sudden you manifested it, Joey.
I got issues.
Well, whatever issues you got, keep them going because I like it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. So I'm sorry. I think I interrupted your flow.
You got a little excited.
I took us way off track,
Yeah.
but
Oh, that's
I'm
fine.
excited about those fish, just like you are, and I think
Oh,
just like
yeah.
everybody is. And it's amazing. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Get back on track, Joe.
Oh,
I
no.
apologize.
No, I think that was great because everyone's heard me talk about it since you let me start coming on here. That's been my addiction all year.
Yeah.
I know the striped bass are what they are right now, and that kind of leads into the next thing with Tony. I kind of wanted to touch on because it came up because everything came out with ASMFC recently. How did I word this before, Tony? Not summarize it, but can you go over what happened with striped bass for everyone to understand?
Sure. So I kind of give everyone, I just take this opportunity, like probably 3 or 4 minutes, I can get all of this out, maybe less. But I'm just going to take an opportunity to give a history of striped bass, kind of from the beginning of the issues, where we are since the stock assessment a year ago, and where we're going today. Okay, because this is, to me, striped bass are every man's fish, right? You can catch them from a boat. You can catch them with a $10 Walmart rod. You can catch them with the most expensive equipment in the world on the nicest boat, trolling. You can catch them almost any way you want, and I think it's just so much a part of the East Coast, and it's such an important fish that people need to understand. What happened with them, how we recovered them, and where they are now. So if you go all the way back to the 70s, everyone was kind of noticing a dramatic decline in striped bass stocks. Okay. And by the early 80s, it was really bad. It was getting difficult to even catch a striped bass. And in 1985, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, which is an interstate compact that manages a lot of our fisheries like weakfish, croaker, spot, striped bass. They co-manage bluefish. A lot of the stuff that we care about comes down at and I'll just refer to them as the commission from now on, but it's ASMFC, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. In 1985, they instituted regulations that would protect the 1982 year class. The 1982 year class was, for the time, it was robust, despite the fact that there were so few fish. It was not anything that would be considered a good spawn now, but the commissioners knew that if they didn't protect that. So just as an FYI, striped bass don't really reach sexual maturity until they're about 7 or 8 years old. Puts them somewhere around like between 28, 32 inches. And that's really the first time that they're going to spawn. Okay. So they said, hey, let's protect the 1982 year class. And that's also when certain states started taking on their own state moratoriums for striped bass. That's what we would call the moratorium in Maryland. Began in 1985. So as the regulations protected that year class, as it matriculated through the system and got larger every year, the results were shocking. By 1998, the spawning stock biomass, which is how the health of striped bass are measured, and that is the amount of sexually adult females in the system. And we call that the SSB. And that's the spawning stock biomass, and that is 100% how health of striped bass is measured. By 1988, by protecting the 82 year class in 1985, the SSB in Maryland doubled, which led, if you look at the young of the year chart, how many babies are born, how many baby striped bass are born each year, and like thousands of SANE studies throughout the bay. It's been going on since the 50s. It's actually a very good study, and it gives you a very good metric of what we have coming down the pipe. By protecting the 82 year class in 85, it doubled in 88, and by the mid 90s, we started to have these prolific year classes being born. And if anyone who fished in the late 90s to early 2000s